We're back with another episode of Acxiom After Work. I'm your host, Crystal Floyd, and today I'm excited to be joined by Lance Osborne. Welcome, Lance.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. I'm excited.
So before we get started, let's talk about yourself a little bit. Tell us how long you've been at Acxiom. What do you do here?
Sure. Yeah. Coming on my seventh total year at Acxiom. I'm a boomerang, so I'm here for my second stint, and my role is product marketing for some of our partner and platform solutions.
So that's all fun. But today we're going to talk about the other part of what Lance does, the author Lance. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Sure. The title of the book is Bold Crossings, and here's the book. I hope you can see it. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. That's a shameless plug for the Texas artist that did the cover, named Steve Wilgren. It's a historical novel. It's really a duet of two teens, one Anglo boy named Malcolm Hornsby and one Comanche girl named Wookaboo. The story follows their ups and downs as they come of age in the Texas wilderness in the 1830s.
So where did you get your inspiration for the book Bold Crossing?
So I grew up with the descendants of the Hornsby family. Their name is a bit of a legend here in Central Texas. When you fly into the Austin airport, you actually fly over Hornsby Bend in the Colorado River, where they settled. And at one point early in my writing career, one of the Hornsby matriarchs gave me a shoebox full of photos and clippings, and I promised her I would write something. On the Comanche side, as I started digging into the research, it quickly became apparent that as the Anglos migrated into Texas, there were already many peoples who called Texas home. And the inspiration was really the two sides of this of same adventure, and the big differences and the incredible similarities.
So let's go back to how you started into being an author. What was that process like? What was the inspiration behind saying, I want to write a book?
Yeah, that's tough. So I've been writing a lot of screenplays and stage plays, and someone suggested that I try to write a novel. Um, and really, because it's a historical novel, I wanted to dive. Everything I write is historical, and so I always have to dive into the research and just swim around in the research. It could be months, it could be even years, because I want the story to be as accurate as possible from a historical perspective. But really, just as important, I want to build the story based on what it was really like for the people. What did they believe? What were their joys, their challenges? What did they do for work and for fun? What were their ambitions? What were their fears?
So, how long did it take you to write this novel?
A total of 10 years, Crystal.
10 years?
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that again.
So, within those 10 years, I'm sure there must have been some times or periods of time where there was writer's block. How did you overcome that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I have an advantage, and anyone who writes historical materials has an advantage because there's already something there, right? You're not starting from a blank page like many fiction writers, but there are times when you need another chapter or another section just to keep the narrative, the rhythm of the narrative going. And then that can be a little tougher, but my trick, and then this goes for work too, is just put your fingers on the keyboard and write something. It's the physical action of writing, even if it's by hand. That works for me. You can always go back and edit. It's not sculpture in stone, right? You can edit a zillion times. So just write. Try to write something, and eventually you'll get to the place where you need to be.
So, they always say the first step is you got to take the first step. That is the very first step is to write something.
That's right.
So, what was one of the most challenging times in writing this book? Tell us about one of the most challenging times you've had experience.
Well, there's no doubt that the most difficult part of the book was writing Wookabu's side of the story, the Comanche side of the story. Yes, we've raised 3 daughters, but being true to how a teenage girl thinks and acts takes a lot of work. Then multiply that challenge by 1,000, because you're talking about a Comanche teen who lived 200 years ago with a completely different culture, beliefs, points of view. Plus, most indigenous peoples did not write things down. So there's very little source material that's not written secondhand and therefore suspect.
So, you mentioned earlier that a lot of research went into writing this book. How did you ensure the historical integrity of the information that you collected?
One of the most important things to me, and maybe why it takes a while and I do a lot of research, I think it has to be as historically accurate as possible to be true to your characters. Luckily, I love the detective part of that research and that work. And you also have to be a filter, because there's a ton of bad, biased, uninformed, non-scientific historical information out there. Really, they're myths, myths that you could have grown up with. And you have to dig a lot. You have to read every source with healthy skepticism. In this project, there are, like I said, legends around Central Texas, around this family, but you have to look at them objectively and scientifically, and from very many different views: indigenous, slave, free men and free women, Anglo, Hispanic, German, Cajun, even French. It was a true melting pot of people, and you need to look from all those angles. For the Comanche side of the story, I needed to find Comanche history and culture experts, and I needed them to trust me, and that takes time. But I was lucky enough to be introduced to a professor at the Comanche College in Lawton, Oklahoma, and we became very close. And she was also Penatuka, which Wookabu, that's her band of Comanche. The only sad part of that is that Juanita passed away in 2021, just as the book was being published.
Wow. So this is so interesting, Lance. So earlier you mentioned that you've written some stage plays and screenplays. Tell us a little bit about some of that stuff that you did.
Yeah, sure. I'm a very visual writer. I like to explore, what do the characters see, what do they hear, what do they smell, how do their actions reflect their personality and their feelings. All of that lends itself to film. So I've been that's why I started in screenplays, but I still write in scenes, and I've written half a dozen screenplays. I had one that was optioned, but it never broke through. I've written stage plays, but nothing that's ever gotten outside of Austin. But I also do research and write at work. And so I kind of feel like I stay fresh and I never get rusty.
So are there any plans to write any books or stage plays or screenplays in the future?
I'll give you 2 guesses, Crystal, and the first one doesn't count. Yes, I'm addicted. I think most writers are addicted, and so I'm already working on the next projects. Of course, they're historical. One is from the late 1800s about a magical breed of horse. I use magical lightly. And the other is a more contemporary and more autobiographical book about, or short story about, desegregation in the early 70s, 1970s.
So you have to tell us, what advice would you have for someone who's wanting to get into writing a novel or interested in writing a book? What advice would you have for them?
Well, we touched on it a little before, and I think you hit it on the head, and that is, you have to actually write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. There's no way to get around the work. You can go to all the classes you want, join writers groups, pay for writers retreats, but all of that is a waste if you're not going to knuckle down and struggle through the writing. Just get it on paper. Don't self-edit at first. Get it out there. At least start with an outline. And most importantly, and probably also helpful, is you need to know where the story is going to end. That's probably the first thing you need to decide. Who are the characters and where is the story going? Because you want everything that happens in the story to get you to that ending.
That makes sense. Well, finally, before we go, you have to tell us, where can we find your book, Bold Crossings?
So most of the larger online book suppliers around the planet offer the book. I found just recently that it's actually listed on an online bookstore in Kazakhstan, which is cool. Amazon has the book at a great price, especially if you're a Prime member and don't have to pay shipping. And I'll put in a plug, regardless of where you buy the book, if you would please drop a review on the Amazon site. Books by independently published authors, they live or die based on reviews.
Well, great. Well, Lance, this has been amazing talking to you. It's been a great time talking to you and learning about the other side of Lance, the author. Looking forward to checking out your book soon. This has been Acxiom After Work, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.